What if I told you that the reason you're still single isn't because something is wrong with you, but because something greater is being prepared for you? What if this silence, this waiting, this loneliness you sometimes feel isn't rejection, but protection? And what if the moment you finally stop chasing, stop forcing, stop settling, is the exact moment your soulmate starts walking into your life? The truth is, your soulmate will find you when you least expect it, not when you're desperate, not when you're afraid of being alone, but when you're becoming stronger, wiser, more whole, and ready for a love that doesn't just start with butterflies but stays with commitment, peace, and purpose. When people hear the words, "Your soulmate will find you when you least expect it," something deep inside them either feels comforted or frustrated, because part of you wants to believe that love will arrive naturally without force and without exhaustion, yet another part of you is tired of waiting, tired of watching others fall in love, get married, build families, and post smiling pictures while you sit there wondering when your turn will come. But what if the delay is not denial? What if the waiting is not punishment? What if this season is not empty but intentional? Because the truth is that the greatest love stories rarely begin when someone is desperately searching, they begin when someone is becoming whole, becoming healed, becoming aligned, becoming at peace with themselves. And that is why so often your soulmate will find you when you least expect it, because expectation built on anxiety creates tension, while expectation built on trust creates readiness, and readiness is what love responds to, not desperation, not fear, not loneliness disguised as passion, but readiness shaped by growth. And the reason this message matters is because many people chase love like it is a finish line, when in reality love is a reflection, and whatever you are internally is what you attract externally. So if you are anxious, you will attract chaos. If you are insecure, you will attract confusion. If you are incomplete, you will attract someone who feeds on that incompleteness. But when you are grounded, when you are secure, when you are fulfilled even while single, that is when something shifts in your energy and the right person can finally recognize you, because soulmates are not found through panic, they are aligned through preparation, and preparation rarely feels glamorous, it feels lonely, it feels quiet, it feels like nights where you question everything. It feels like days where you focus on your work, your healing, your goals, your spiritual growth, while everyone else seems distracted by romance. But what you do not see is that the quiet season is shaping you into someone capable of sustaining real love, not just starting it. And there is a difference between starting love and sustaining love, because starting love is emotional and exciting and full of chemistry, but sustaining love requires maturity, patience, communication, self-awareness, and the ability to choose someone even on the days you do not feel butterflies. And those qualities are not developed through rushing into relationships, they are developed through reflection, through solitude, through learning your patterns and breaking unhealthy cycles. And that is why the timing feels slow, because transformation is not instant. And perhaps the reason you have not met your soulmate yet is not because they do not exist, but because both of you are still being shaped into the people who can meet each other without self-sabotage. And imagine meeting the right person too early. Imagine crossing paths before you learned how to communicate your needs, before you healed from past betrayal, before you stopped chasing validation. You might have met the right person but ruined the opportunity because you were not ready to receive them. And that is a painful thought, because sometimes we blame timing when in reality timing protected us from losing something we were not mature enough to keep. And so when you least expect it does not mean randomly without purpose, it means unexpectedly because you are no longer obsessing over it. It means unexpectedly because you are no longer measuring your worth by your relationship status. It means unexpectedly because you finally surrendered control and started living fully instead of waiting passively. And there is a powerful shift that happens when you stop looking at every new person as a potential spouse and start looking at life as something to be experienced. Because desperation clouds discernment, and when you are desperate you ignore red flags, you lower standards, you confuse attention for affection, you mistake intensity for intimacy, but when you are content on your own you see clearly, you walk away when something feels wrong, you no longer beg to be chosen, and ironically that self-respect is magnetic, because people are drawn to those who are not trying to impress, and think about the times you were most attractive in your life. It was probably when you were focused on your passions, your fitness, your purpose, your peace. Not when you were anxiously refreshing your messages hoping someone would reply, and that is because confidence rooted in self-sufficiency is powerful, and soulmates are not meant to complete you, they are meant to complement you, and you cannot be complimented if you do not know who you are yet, and so the waiting season becomes a discovery season, a season where you ask yourself what kind of partner you want to be. Not just what kind of partner you want to have, because it is easy to create a long list of qualities you expect from someone else, but it is harder to ask if you embody those same qualities, and if you desire loyalty, are you loyal? If you desire emotional intelligence, are you emotionally intelligent? If you desire stability, are you stable? Because love is not about finding perfection, it is about finding alignment, and alignment requires honesty with yourself. And sometimes the reason you least expect it is because you have shifted your focus from, who will love me, to, how can I love well? And that internal shift changes everything, and there is also something beautiful about unexpected love because it feels pure, it feels unforced, it feels like two paths crossing naturally instead of being dragged together by fear of being alone. And some of the strongest relationships begin in ordinary moments, in workplaces, in shared projects, in mutual friendships, in seasons where neither person was actively searching, because they were busy building their lives, and when two people building their lives meet, they do not cling, they connect. And connection is different from attachment because attachment is rooted in fear of loss while connection is rooted in mutual growth, and when you least expect it often means when you are not clinging, when you are not scanning every room, when you are not measuring your timeline against someone else's engagement ring, but when you are present, grounded, alive in your own journey. And perhaps the reason this feels difficult is because society glorifies urgency in love. There is constant messaging that if you are single past a certain age you are behind, that if you are not married yet you are missing out, that if you are alone you must be flawed, but none of those narratives account for personal development, emotional readiness, or divine timing, and comparison steals peace because you never see the full story behind someone else's relationship. You only see curated moments, and you do not see the compromises, the struggles, the incompatibilities that may exist beneath the surface, and so instead of asking why it has not happened yet, maybe ask what this season is teaching you. Maybe it is teaching patience, maybe it is teaching discernment, maybe it is teaching independence. Maybe it is teaching you how to sit with your own thoughts without needing distraction, and independence is not the opposite of love, it is the foundation of healthy love, because when two independent people come together they choose each other freely, not out of necessity but out of desire, and that choice is powerful, and there is also something spiritually profound about surrendering your timeline, about saying I trust that what is meant for me will not miss me, because fear often whispers that you have to chase or you will lose your chance. But what is truly aligned does not require manipulation, it does not require pretending to be someone you are not, it does not require constant anxiety, it flows with clarity, and clarity does not mean absence of challenges but presence of peace even within them, and many people meet their soulmate when they least expect it because they have finally released the pressure, and pressure suffocates love, because love grows best in freedom, and freedom comes when you are not gripping tightly to outcomes. And think about how many times you forced something in the past only to realize later that it was not right, how many times you convinced yourself that someone was the one simply because you did not want to start over, and starting over feels exhausting but settling is far more costly because it costs you your authenticity, your joy, your long-term fulfillment, and so the waiting is protection from settling, it is refinement of standards, it is strengthening of identity. And when you least expect it might mean when you are laughing with friends, when you are traveling, when you are immersed in a new hobby, when you are focused on your purpose, when you have finally made peace with being single, and there is a deep irony in that because the moment you stop searching frantically is often the moment your energy becomes most aligned with healthy partnership, and that alignment is not coincidence. It is readiness meeting readiness, and readiness cannot be faked because it shows in how you handle conflict, how you communicate boundaries, how you manage your emotions, and if you look back at who you were a few years ago you might realize that you were not ready for the kind of love you say you want now, and that realization should not bring shame but gratitude because growth is evidence that the waiting has purpose. And sometimes the delay is giving you stories to tell, experiences to share, lessons to apply in your future relationship, because love is not just about romance. It is about partnership through life's complexities, and if you have not yet developed resilience, empathy, and emotional depth, then the relationship may struggle under pressure, and so instead of resenting the phrase, when you least expect it, see it as reassurance that love does not require constant striving, that you do not have to exhaust yourself scanning every dating app, that you do not have to compromise your values just to feel chosen, that the right connection will feel mutual. And mutuality is important because one-sided effort is draining, and if you have ever been the only one trying, the only one initiating, the only one fighting to keep something alive, you know how exhausting that feels, and soulmate energy does not feel like constant anxiety, it feels like reciprocity, like balance, like two people leaning in equally, and that kind of balance often enters your life when you are balanced within yourself, and so maybe this season is about building that inner balance, about loving your routine, about strengthening your friendships, about deepening your faith, about building financial stability, about pursuing dreams you once postponed, because when you least expect it does not mean randomly without effort, it means organically within a life you are actively living, and the most beautiful love stories are not built on waiting in isolation but on two individuals who were fully alive before they met, and when they meet they do not abandon themselves, they expand together. And that expansion requires wholeness, and wholeness requires time, and time can feel frustrating when you want companionship now, but temporary loneliness is lighter than lifelong misalignment, and perhaps tonight instead of asking when will I meet them ask who am I becoming before I do, because becoming is the real preparation, and one day you will look back at this season and realize that if you had met them earlier you would not have appreciated them the same way, you would not have recognized their value. You would not have been stable enough to nurture what you were given, and that perspective transforms waiting from passive suffering into active preparation, and when the moment finally arrives it will not feel like desperation finally satisfied but like peace gently confirmed, like something clicking without chaos, like excitement grounded in safety, and you will realize that the unexpected nature of it was not randomness but perfect alignment, because while you were busy building your life, healing your heart, strengthening your character, your soulmate was doing the same, and two journeys moving separately were always moving toward intersection, and intersections do not happen because one person forced them, they happen because both roads were already heading there, and that is why you can breathe tonight, that is why you can release the timeline, that is why you can focus on becoming the best version of yourself without fear of missing out. Because what is aligned with your growth will not pass you by, and when you least expect it simply means when you are no longer ruled by fear, when you are no longer measuring your worth by someone else's presence, when you are living so fully that love becomes a beautiful addition rather than a desperate necessity, and in that moment when it finally happens you will understand that the waiting was never wasted. The solitude was never pointless, the tears were never unseen, the growth was never insignificant, because everything was shaping you for a connection that does not just start beautifully but endures beautifully, and endurance is what makes a soulmate more than a fantasy, it makes them a partner, and partners are not found through panic but through patience, and patience, though uncomfortable, is often the doorway to the love that lasts. And as you continue to walk through this season of becoming, there is another layer you begin to understand, which is that love that lasts is not built on constant emotional highs but on steady emotional health, and emotional health is developed in solitude long before it is tested in partnership. Because when you are alone you are forced to confront your insecurities without distraction. You are forced to sit with your fears without someone else soothing them, you are forced to build routines, discipline, and self-respect without applause, and those quiet victories matter more than dramatic romantic gestures ever could, because a soulmate is not meant to rescue you from yourself but to walk beside a version of you that already knows how to stand, and standing alone with confidence is one of the strongest indicators that you are close to attracting someone who can stand with you rather than lean entirely on you. And so when people say your soulmate will find you when you least expect it also implies that you will not be searching from a place of emptiness but from a place of overflow, because overflow attracts differently than emptiness does. Emptiness clings while overflow shares, emptiness demands while overflow gives freely, and when two people who are both living from overflow meet, they do not drain each other, they multiply each other's peace. And that kind of multiplication is rare because it requires both individuals to have done deep internal work, work that no one sees, work that does not trend on social media, work that often feels thankless and slow, but slow growth produces strong roots, and strong roots are what keep relationships stable when storms inevitably come, because no relationship is free from challenge. But healthy relationships are sustained by two people who have learned how to regulate their emotions rather than react impulsively. And many times the reason you have not met your soulmate yet is because you are still learning emotional regulation, you are still learning how to respond instead of explode, how to communicate instead of withdraw, how to set boundaries instead of overextend. And these lessons are often painful because they expose patterns you may not be proud of, patterns of jealousy, patterns of people-pleasing, patterns of choosing emotionally unavailable partners, and confronting those patterns feels uncomfortable. But ignoring them would only sabotage your future, and so the delay becomes discipline, the solitude becomes schooling, and you begin to see that unexpected love does not mean accidental love, it means prepared love arriving at the right intersection of maturity and timing. And think about how many relationships begin with strong attraction but collapse under poor communication. How many couples fall apart not because they did not love each other but because they lacked the tools to sustain that love. And perhaps the reason your story is unfolding slowly is because you are being equipped with those tools now, because chemistry can start a relationship but character keeps it alive. And character is not built in a rush, it is refined through seasons of reflection, correction, and growth, and sometimes the hardest part of waiting is watching people who seem less prepared enter relationships before you, but you never truly know what preparation someone else has or has not done. And comparison distracts you from your own path, and your path is uniquely designed for your development. And development is not always visible externally, sometimes it is happening internally where no one else can applaud it, and that invisibility can feel discouraging, but unseen growth is still growth, and unseen preparation is often the most important kind because it builds authenticity rather than performance, and authenticity is magnetic because it allows you to show up fully without pretending. And pretending is exhausting, especially in relationships where you feel pressured to maintain an image rather than live in truth, and when you least expect it might also mean when you are finally comfortable being exactly who you are, not shrinking to fit someone else's preference and not exaggerating to gain attention, but simply existing confidently in your identity. And that level of comfort changes how you show up in every interaction, because you are no longer auditioning for love, you are simply open to it. And openness is different from desperation because openness says I welcome what is aligned while desperation says I will accept whatever appears, and the difference between those two mindsets determines the quality of what you attract. And many people who rush into relationships are not truly open, they are afraid of being alone, afraid of missing out, afraid of aging without partnership. But fear-based decisions rarely produce peaceful outcomes. And peace is one of the strongest indicators of a soulmate connection because peace does not mean absence of excitement, it means absence of chaos. And chaos often disguises itself as passion, but true passion can exist without instability, and when you meet someone who feels aligned you will not feel constant anxiety about where you stand, you will not feel like you have to decode mixed signals, you will not feel like you are constantly proving your worth, because mutual love does not require constant persuasion. And mutuality is rare because it requires both individuals to have healed enough to give consistently without manipulation, and healing is a journey, not a switch, and so while you are healing, your future partner may also be healing, and perhaps you have crossed paths before but neither of you were ready to recognize the opportunity, and timing matters because recognition requires awareness. And awareness requires growth, and growth requires experience, and experience often includes heartbreak, and heartbreak, though painful, teaches discernment, and discernment protects your future. And so instead of regretting past relationships that did not work, you can reframe them as lessons that sharpened your understanding of what is healthy and what is not. Because without contrast you cannot fully appreciate compatibility, and compatibility is deeper than shared interests, it is shared values, shared vision, shared emotional maturity, and those qualities are not always obvious at first glance. Which is why rushing often leads to disappointment, but when you are not urgently searching, you observe more carefully, you listen more intentionally, you evaluate more wisely, and wisdom increases your chances of choosing well, because finding a soulmate is not just about being found, it is also about choosing correctly when the opportunity appears, and choice requires clarity, and clarity grows in seasons of self-awareness, and self-awareness grows in solitude, and solitude, though uncomfortable, is sacred because it reveals who you are without external validation, and when you know who you are less likely to abandon yourself for the sake of companionship, and abandoning yourself is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in love, because losing yourself to keep someone else eventually leads to resentment, and resentment erodes connection slowly but surely. And so your time alone is teaching you how to maintain your identity while still being open to partnership. And identity stability is attractive because it signals that you will not expect someone else to define you, and when two people with stable identities come together, they create a partnership based on respect rather than dependency, and dependency can feel intense but respect is what sustains longevity. And longevity is what transforms romance into legacy, and maybe your love story is being delayed because it is meant to be durable, not dramatic. Because dramatic love burns fast and fades quickly while durable love builds steadily and lasts, and durability requires patience in its construction, just like anything valuable in life. And if you reflect honestly, you may realize that the version of you who first started longing for love is not the same version of you today. You are wiser, stronger, more self-aware, more selective, and that evolution proves that the waiting is shaping you. And if you continue evolving at this pace, you will eventually reach a point where you are not even worried about when it will happen because you trust that your growth is positioning you correctly, and trust transforms waiting from anxiety into anticipation, and anticipation feels different because it carries hope without pressure, and pressure is what often blocks natural connections because people can sense when you're trying too hard to make something fit, and forcing compatibility rarely produces harmony, but organic connection unfolds with surprising ease. And that ease is often why it feels unexpected. Because you are not strategizing every interaction, you are simply present, and presence is powerful because it allows genuine connection to form without performance, and performance attracts applause but authenticity attracts partnership, and partnership is what you truly desire, someone to walk through life with, someone to build with, someone to grow with, someone who sees your flaws and chooses you anyway, and that level of acceptance requires both individuals to have accepted themselves first. Because self-rejection often leads to projecting unrealistic expectations onto others, and projection distorts reality, but self-acceptance clarifies it, and clarity is what helps you recognize your soulmate when they appear, because they may not look exactly like your old fantasies, they may not arrive in the dramatic way you once imagined, but they will feel aligned in ways that matter more than surface details. And when that moment comes, you will understand why it had to happen at this stage of your life, not earlier, not later, but now, when you are capable of nurturing what you once only dreamed about, and that realization will make every lonely night, every tearful prayer, every moment of doubt feel purposeful, because purpose redeems pain, and knowing that your soulmate will find you when you least expect it allows you to live fully in the present without obsessing over the future, because you trust that what is meant for you is moving toward you even when you cannot see it. And in that trust you find peace, and in that peace you become ready, and readiness is the quiet signal that love is closer than you think.